Christina, do you want me to read the bullet points or you will, the call to order?
I can't, you can read it. It's whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it?
Sure. All right, so we call to order this meeting of February.
Hold on, I haven't opened it yet, sorry. Okay, now you're live.
Right, so let's call to order this meeting of Monday, February 22nd, 2021 for the Finance Committee. Public comment, Christina?
Prior to public comment, let's do roll call, and then I also have the meeting procedures that have to be read as well. So the procedures adopted for this meeting meet or exceed the standards set forth in Governor Newsom's Order N-25-20, which allows public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. At this time, I'll conduct roll, and I would ask the chair to recognize me afterward to confirm certain matters for the record. Vice Chair Perkins?
Here.
And Chair Zafar?
Here.
Thank you.
And now I recognize City Clerk Christina Franco again.
Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all committee members can hear the proceedings clearly. If there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each committee member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that the persons representing themselves to be committee members are in fact committee members.
Yes.
Seeing no objection, I will turn the meeting back over to the chair with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Thank you. Item number 2, public comment. Members of the audience are encouraged to address the Finance Committee on any non-agenda item. Members of the public who are participating via Zoom will have the opportunity to make comments to the Finance Committee live through the Zoom application. Comments from the public under public comment may also be submitted by email. No committee action can be taken at the meeting on these issues raised during public comment, whether submitted by email or Zoom. To comment by video conference, Zoom, click the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone to request to speak when public comment is being taken on the agenda item, which is now. You will then be unmuted when it is your turn to make your comment for up to 3 minutes. After the allocated time, you will then be remuted. Do we have any public comment?
We do not have any requests to speak, and it looks like we do not have anyone of the public in the audience.
Right, giving it a minute if anybody would like to raise their hand to speak. If not, we can close public comment and move on to item number 3, which is approval of minutes. Item 3.1, Finance Committee regular meeting minutes, January 25th, 2021. Christina, will you be taking roll call for that?
Can I get a motion?
I move the minutes.
I can second.
Thank you. And then Vice Chair Perkins?
Yes.
And Chair Zafar?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 2-0.
Awesome. Item number 4, unfinished business. Looks like we have none. Item number 5, new business. We have 5.1, Midyear Financial Review 2020/2021. Staff report by Ava Phelps, Administrative Services Director.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Before you is, in your packets, you have the Midyear 2020/2021 Financial Review. It has all the detail in it. Tonight, I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation of just some of the summary of what's in the actual report. If you can pull that up, Christina. Next page. So the presentation, I will go over some key highlights, overview of how the report was prepared, give you some economic outlooks, some of the projected results that came out of our review. We have some recommended adjustments, and then I'll come back with the conclusion at the end. Next. So as you know, some of the key highlights to this presentation is that we're seeing the effects of COVID-19, and it severely impacted our revenue streams. The general policy reserves, we started the year out at 24.3 million. That was 3.9 million more than what was estimated when the budget was adopted. And when we finalized the year, we came in at 24.3. And that's due to better than anticipated results. And we were carefully monitoring our spending. And we had a few vacancies in positions. And also we received a $1 million grant from the state, the CARES Fund. So we're projecting, after all the results came in, we're projecting that we're going to end the year at June 30th, 2021 with 20.8 million in reserves. And that's prior to any supplemental appropriations that we recommend at the end of this presentation. We did have a drawdown of 1.6 million of reserves for the debt service fund. And as you know, the debt service had some of the reserves there. And as of this year, we're moving all of those back after we make that one payment. And I'll go over that when we get to the reserve piece. The general fund revenues are projected to come in 4.4 million below budget. However, the expenditures are coming in 2 million below budget. Next slide. Our general fund transfers, the net out is 1.7 million. And if you look at the report, when you look at the net transfers in, it may be different. And that's only because we're excluding the transfer in of all the remaining debt service funds, because that would duplicate if we had put the full number in there. So the net result out is 1.7 million. Next slide. So this report is intended to give you kind of a mid-year look at the financial condition of the city. So we looked at the results through December 2020, and we're going to be comparing with December 2019. We got input from all the city departments, worked on this to get their analysis. And then we took the estimates for the full year as part of the budget process. We looked at the state budget for 21-22, their proposed Gavin Newsom's budget that he's proposing 227.2 billion. And it includes about 4 billion in coronavirus relief. However, we don't see any negative impact to what they're proposing for next year. So looking at the economic outlook, the pandemic has severely impacted all levels of government, state, federal, the local economy, but we're seeing some indication that there's been some improvement since December. The US economy grew 33.4 in the third quarter of 2020, and then in the fourth quarter, it increased about 4%. However, overall for the year compared to 2019, it's down 3.5%. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported about 140,000 jobs lost in just December 2020, but when you look at all jobs lost, there's 9.8 million fewer employed than prior to the pandemic. And a lot of economists are saying that it will probably take more than 2 years to return to pre-pandemic levels. The unemployment rates, when you compare them to December 2020 to 2029, the national average is 6.7 compared to 3.6. California is at 9% compared to 3.9% a year ago, and then Contra Costa County is 7.9% compared to 2.6, and San Ramon still has the lowest unemployment rate at 5.6, but it's higher than it was at 2.2% back in December of 2019. Next slide.
Eva, can I ask you something? Are we able to see what kind of jobs were impacted? Is there data where you could look that up when it comes to job loss?
Yeah, there is data that shows kind of different sectors of what jobs was hit the hardest. And I can probably get that for you if you want.
Yeah, or you can point me to it.
You can, we get sales tax data as well, and it's probably some of the obvious restaurants, hotels, leisure industry type things were just really hit hard, among other things, but those are the drivers for this.
Correct.
Thank you.
So the U.S. housing construction soared 7% in 2020 as historic low mortgage rates continue to support the housing market. The home prices grew about 8.4% over the prior year and is still trending in 2021 to continue that trend. California's median home price increased 16.8% and compared to last year, and the existing single family homes rose 28%. The state controller's December 2020 cash receipts is showing in all of the three major revenue streams that they have: personal income tax, corporate tax, and sales tax is higher than projected. Actually, it came in at 91.2 billion. That's 18.3 billion than what they estimated. Next slide.
Question
Sure.
before you go. U.S. housing construction soared 7% as historic low home mortgage rates. But yet I keep hearing that projects like Aspenwood can't get financing. Those don't quite match up.
I don't know the comparison to the type of construction that they're doing compared to the average across the United States. Maybe it's just that single project, but overall projects, new construction is still going strong.
Somebody's financing that new construction, because most home builders aren't self-financed. Really, most aren't. I'm sure there are some, but I just find that curious that we can get a historic rise in construction in one sector, but yet.
Is Aspenwood more of a lower based on income type of house?
Affordable, yeah. I think Debbie has her hand raised. She wants to add.
Yeah, so Aspenwood, because it's a senior living project or an apartment project, the finance is a bit difficult right now because of COVID and because the care need to be taken with seniors. And so that's why their financing's been held up according to the property owners. So they're hoping out the vaccinations that are rolling out that we should see some financing being made available for them. But that's in talking with the owners, that's what they've shared with me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Next slide. So this is just a graph showing you the first 6 months comparison of the last fiscal year to this fiscal year, and kind of giving you the full year estimate compared to the budget and compared to how we ended in revenue for the full year last year. Next slide. So at the mid-year point, revenue was 19.1 million. That's 4.4 million or 18.7 below compared to the same period last year. We are seeing increases in property tax, sales tax, and franchise fees. However, we saw a decrease in TOT, license and permits, charges for services, and miscellaneous revenue. This chart is a side-by-side comparison of the 6 months in 2019 compared to 2020. And as you can see from this chart, how TOT is very noticeable, how it's down, charges for services and license and permits slightly, but miscellaneous revenue took a big hit. Next slide.
So I'm curious about the franchise. That has gone up.
Yeah, I have a slide for each one of those.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Next slide. Okay. So the full year estimate for revenue is we're coming in at 48.1 million. That's still 4.4 million or 8% below the adopted budget. Next slide. So here is a comparison side by side, just showing what we budgeted versus what our estimates. The estimates are in orange. As you can see, when you get to TOT again and miscellaneous revenue, you see a big change. Next slide. So on property tax, at the full year, we're coming in at budget of 22.2 million. That's still 300,000 above the prior year actuals. And per the county assessors, the assessed valuation, they estimated 3.9% increase for 2021. 2021. Next slide. Sales tax, the full year estimate is 10.4 million. That's 900,000 above budget, and it's 200,000 above the prior year actuals. This is forecasted by HDL and Associates, our sales tax consultant. And the receipts are in reporting of sales tax revenues usually lagged for several months. The current results for the quarter is ending September 2020, and we'll see December 2020 results in mid-March. TOT, the full estimate is 1.3 million, and that's 1.3 million below budget, and it's 1.1 million below prior year actual. So the growth in this is the hotel occupancy, which has greatly been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Franchise fees, the full estimate is 5.5 million. It's about 500,000 below budget. However, it's 600,000 above the prior year actuals, and growth in this is impacted by annexations and rates. However, this year was impacted by the COVID-19 closures of businesses. So we're seeing a lot of either no payments or businesses just closed down. So we're not getting the anticipated revenue that we thought we would get in because businesses have closed. Any other questions on franchise?
Thank you.
The license and permits, the full year estimate is 2.4 million. It's slightly below budget, not significantly. It's 300,000 above prior year actuals, and revenue is subject to the timing of development projects for this revenue category. Charges for services, full year estimate is 3.3 million. That's 2.1 million below budget, 2 million below last year's actuals. And this revenue, although it's timing of development projects, the recreation programs are included in this, and they were severely impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. So this is where we're really seeing the revenue stream has really gone down because of the closures of recreation programs. So this is just a chart giving you a comparison of the first 6 months of the year to the prior first 6 months of the year, and the difference. We're showing 4.4 million coming under, and then the full estimate comparing the estimate to the budget, we're coming in at 4.4 million under. And then just showing you how much we had at the year end fiscal year 19-20, our revenue stream was at 51 million. Or 50.5 million. Okay, moving on to expenditures. This chart just kind of gives you a visual showing what the first months look like compared to the previous year, and then showing you the estimate, full year adopted budget, and the actuals from last year. Next slide. So the results at the mid-year point, expenditures were at 21.4 million. That's 1.2 million or 5.7% higher than the same period last year. And this is reflective of higher salary and benefit costs and service contracts. However, we do have 23 vacant funded positions. So the full year estimate for expenditures, we're coming in at 48.3 million. That's 2 million or 4% below budget. And this decrease is due to just decrease in spending due to COVID and position vacancies. And we're 2.8 million above last year's actuals. This chart just gives you a comparison of how things are looking by departments. It shows that everyone within the department for the full year is coming in under budget, especially Parks and Recreation. They were the hardest hit with their programming. So they're coming in at 1 million under budget. But overall, all departments are at 2 million under their budget. The policy reserves, as I mentioned earlier, we started the year at 24.3 million in reserves. And as you can see, we have 15.3 million in general fund, and then the debt service fund, we had about 9 million. And then once you take a look at the estimate for expenditures of 48 million in revenue, and expenditures of 48.3. And then we have our transfers out, and that includes some of the like 7 million of transfers from the debt service fund. Overall, the increase in the fund balance will be 5.4 when you're just comparing that to the general fund. But we're going to end the year at 20.8 million in reserves. So there's no longer any reserves in any other fund but general fund. Next slide. So moving on to all funds, this chart gives you a view of all expenditures throughout all the city funds by category. So for the first 6 months compared to the prior year, we're up 5.8 million. However, we're going to end the year down by 2.3 million. Other funds that had a significant change was the development mitigation funds. They're 200,000 below budget. The full estimate is 400,000. That's 200,000 below last year's actual, and this is decreased due to developer fees received, which was impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. Another special fund is the gas tax fund, is 200,000 below budget. The full year estimate is 3.5 million, 100,000 below last year's actual, and this also is had an effect due to COVID-19. Open space fund is 400,000 above budget. The full year estimate is 500,000, and that's 500,000 above last year's. And that includes a development fee received from Lennar Homes. Doherty Valley Fund, the revenue is projected to come in at budget, and then the expenditures are coming in 200,000 below budget. The full year estimate for revenue is 20 million. That's 1.6 million above last year's, and the expenditures are coming in at 21.2 million and 2.1 million above last year's actuals. Okay, some of the recommended budget adjustments that we're requesting. The total for the general fund comes in at $242,376. And they are funding needed for the COVID-19 business assistance program for $90,000. Funding for actual water usage and costs at Athens Downs and Central Parks, $50,400. And then funding transfer is needed to the insurance fund for the city's share of funding to make an additional payment to CalPERS towards Doherty Regional Fire Authority's unfunded pension liability. As you know, their pension has gone up. We've now had to include that in our CAFR. So when we meet with the City of Dublin once a year, it was recommended by the group that they would start making additional payments to CalPERS. So the additional payment would be $240,000, which you'll see it on another slide because that goes into the insurance fund. But the city's share of that $240,000 that is needed is $101,976.
We didn't know about this last May?
No, because we just met. We always meet in October. And we kind of discussed it, and we're looking at things prior to the actuary from CalPERS. And once we got that information, we met in October and made that decision. And we told them that we would put it in our budget for them at mid-year, and then going forward in each year we would include that in the annual budget process.
Okay, so for 21-22, this will be in the budget.
Yes.
It won't come up at mid-year.
No, unless things change where they're increasing or whatever, we would do it at that time. But this is like starting it off for the first year this year, and then it will just roll into the budget for next year and future budgets.
Okay.
And Eva, for the business assist program, or maybe Joe, how the 90,000 is for how long? Is it like for 3 months, or what I guess how long of an engagement is that?
I'll defer to Stephen. but we re-upped it when the new PPP loan stuff came through. So Stephen, do you have a time frame on that?
Yeah, it'll be to the end of June of this year.
Okay. Because the reason I was asking, we'd approved 30,000 for something, and I couldn't remember what the what was the amount of that, the time amount. Okay.
Next slide. All other funds, the requested appropriation is 1.85 million. So various funds for the actual water usage and costs is 34,000. We're requesting 5,000 from West Branch Fund, 3,000 from Brent Creek Fund, and 26,000 from the Doherty Valley Fund. We have some funding needed for auto accident repairs of $83,363. That's $25,820 from the citywide landscaping fund, $17,009 from the citywide street lighting fund, $1,878 from the Canyon Lakes Fund, and $38,653 from the Doherty Valley Fund.
So if we make claims against the insurance company of the person who was involved in the accident, is that correct?
That's correct. That's what I was going to say. Repairs are often reimbursed by the parties'
We
insurance.
take claims of approximately those amounts. Do we add administrative fees, or is that in there?
I would have to look at one bill, but when we bill out, but I think it's based on actual costs that we've incurred. So it's not only to repair, it's when our staff goes out, so staffing time and all of that.
And there is an administrative fee that's charged.
Okay.
Next slide. So under the Doherty Valley Fund, funding for increased electricity usage and costs for the Bollinger Fountain, $23,000. Funding for lease of a new temporary modular office building, furniture and electrical data installation. This modular lease would be to provide space for staffing to adequately socially distance as required per COVID-19 protocol. Under Summerwood Loop, we're requesting funding for an emergency tree removal caused by storm and wind damage, $3,000. Old Ranch Estates Fund, funding for weed abatement to address vegetation growth, $1,500. Next slide. El Nido Fund, funding for tree removal replacement along San Ramon Valley Boulevard. That would be CIP 300010, $5,000. And under the Capital Projects Fund, funding for the Forest Home Farms and Meat Lockers, CIP 925418. And this is to complete the improvements. That would be 40,000, but there's a revenue matching of 40,000 coming from the San Ramon Historic Foundation. So that would be an appropriation and a revenue estimate for that. Next slide. Under the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund, we're asking to reappropriate funding of $31,900 that wasn't used from the previous fiscal year due to manufacturers' labor strikes and COVID-19 shutdowns for Public Works vehicle uplifting, and an additional $18,100 to properly uplift a vehicle number 30. So that would be $50,000. Funding for an emergency replacement and repair of the San Ramon Service Center and Doherty Valley Service bulk material bin pool tarp covers, $15,000. Under the Liability Insurance Fund, we are asking to appropriate total expenditure costs related to Doherty Regional Fire Authority that was not previously included in the 2021 budget. It was an error that was inadvertently missed. That's $1.3 million of expenditures. However, the funding sources, which is the city share and the Dublin share, was included in the budget. Also, this is the actual expenditure for the extra payment to CalPERS for the DERFA unfunded pension liability of $240,000. and also to show the revenue sources of the cities transferring in from the general fund of $101,976, and then Dublin's share of $138,024. Under the solid waste fund, requesting to convert an Office Tech 1-2 position to an office specialist. This position is entirely funded by the solid waste fund. Fees included in the contract are more than sufficient to fund this position at this level. And so we're not asking for additional funding. We're just asking to change the position from an office tech to an office specialist position.
I'm a little ignorant as to how they are in a relative pecking order. Is office specialist typically higher authority, higher pay than an office technician?
Yes, the next level in the series, you go from Office Tech 1-2, and then Office Specialist would be the next level.
Thank you.
So looking forward to fiscal year 21-22, there's some key budget development drivers in preparing this budget, where the strategic pandemic recovery, revenue recovery, dealing with rising costs of employee benefits and inflationary costs, maintaining service levels, and our unfunded pension liability. So those are some of the drivers that's kind of affecting the budget process. Next slide. So in conclusion, the general fund, as I mentioned, the beginning balance was higher than adopted, and that was due to better than anticipated year-end results, carefully monitoring expenditures, savings from position vacancies, and an unanticipated COVID-19 relief package from the state of California, which was $1 million. General fund revenue is estimated to come in $4.4 million below budget. General fund expenditures are expected to come in $2 million below budget. And the projected ending policy reserves are expected at $20.8 million. That's 45% of the prior year audited general fund expenditures plus the general fund transferred to Doherty Valley. So we're above the 36% that our reserve policy requires. And if council approves the $200,000 that from the general fund mid-year request, the projected ending reserves would be at $20.6 million and still at 45% of reserves. And the remaining $1.8 million mid-year request will be funded by other dedicated sources. So that ends my conclusion. If you have any other questions, and the plans is to get your approval to move this forward to the full council to be presented to the full council for approval by resolution. Go ahead.
Let's see. I know we have not included any revenue that might come from Congress. They're working through that as we speak. They're back in session today, well, this evening. Well, they've been back in session for a couple hours. And I'm sure we're going to be watching that carefully and in contact with the League of California Cities to understand. But those estimates have been coming in at 12 to 14 million-ish. And that's the formula used is the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant. But do we know what strings are tied to these dollars? Do we have a sense of that yet?
Well, we actually it's 14 to 17 million, the last numbers we took a look at. Okay. There are some constraints and we're not totally sure. Stephen is, Stephen, you can jump in here too if you'd like. Stephen's working with with Townsend and Associates to figure it out. And these things change, as you know. So you are right in the assumption that no, we haven't taken this money in consideration, nor will we take it until we know it's going to show up. Otherwise, we're going to continue to plan as if that money is not going to be there, because if it doesn't show up, clearly we have a significant hole to fill for even the next budget year. But I'll let Stephen, if there's an update you would like to provide for.
Yeah, we don't know the exact extent of the restrictions, but they did say it would be to replace revenue that was lost or delayed due to COVID. and also COVID-related expenses. So it's not a one-time check, spend however you like. You will have to justify it. But they're also saying that the funds will be available until expended. So we think it might be a multi-year fund that we can draw on. We just don't have the 100% of the details yet. They're still hacking through all that in Congress. So it is looking like it will be necessary for it to be COVID related, but it could be multiple years.
Along those lines, my understanding is once the House passes it and it goes to the Senate can't change much. It's pretty well locked in. The Senate is kind of an up or down vote. The House can make adjustments, but once it goes to the Senate, it's pretty much an up or down vote. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding. And also this section is very, it's not on anybody's radar in terms of controversy. So there's no horse trading going around it. It seems like it's kind of, okay, here's the relief for states and local governments. No one's really going to mess with it.
This is a hypothetical. If we established a grant program ourselves, like some communities have, I would like to know whether such a grant program to our local businesses would be within the confines of those expenditures. Do you have a sense of that?
No, I don't, because at least the grant programs that I'm familiar with came out of general funds that I know of from local cities, but I can certainly ask our consultants to look into that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing that. I don't, right now, I don't see our whole as being in the $14 to $17 million range. We've been fairly fortunate. Our whole is in the past year was a few $1 million. I expect we could demonstrate that in 2019, 2020, we did have some sales tax losses and things like that to the tune of I don't know, $1 million, $2 million.
Well, I think you have to take into account, again, this is where we have to know what the parameters of the allocations are, but revenue is just one piece of this. Expenditures, we really tightened our belts these last 2 years to the point where if that can be recovered, that's significant. And if you remember, even a year ago, we eliminated the vast majority of temp staffing. And then all our facility rentals that we lost. And so there's several police overtime that we didn't account for. We only accounted for a certain amount of it. So Eva has on her desk right now close to $11 million of expenditures that may be applicable. So there's a whole lot more that I'm hopeful if there's some parameters, that these parameters will also allow for these additional things. And, we've withheld staffing significant amounts of positions to save money and stay healthy. So if all those count, then we'll get up there very quickly.
Yeah. Under those circumstances, you don't go back and effectively spend that money. It effectively drops to our bottom line.
Correct.
In many cases, for money we didn't spend. There's things like using our parks and public works staff to deliver meals to seniors.
It counted in the CARES funding. When I had to report for the CARES funding, I threw that in there too.
Okay.
And that's why I was at 11 million, because I was using any staff that was diverted for COVID relief, and police, all of their time was included there because they were considered emergency employees.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. I'm glad to see you guys are really on this. I'm over here just kind of letting my brain spin, and that's probably something you don't like. But
no, we prefer it because we want to capture every possible, if it does come through, if the relief package does come through, we want to find and capture every possible thing we can. And so any suggestions or thoughts coming from the council in any way is very much welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I'm heartened to see that while it could be horrible, it's only bad.
Yeah.
We're in a fairly positive position with our reserves so that we can sustain our staff and the bulk of our programs, our vital programs as they are. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eva, for the presentation. I think Councilmember Perkins asked most of the questions that were on my mind as well, as we're looking at those federal tax dollars. Yeah, other than that, great presentation. Thank you for the deep insight into everything. I'm new to this committee, but I've really enjoyed the detail you put into your presentation. I think in a way, San Ramon's been lucky now, being less retail and more housing, and we've probably benefited from that. And like Councilmember Perkins said, I don't feel too bad after looking at the budget. You've really done a great job of making sure that, like Joe said, tightening our belts and making sure that we wrote this out, and our reserves are more than what we planned for. So just overall, I think it's a great budget and great outlook, a mid-year outlook. So do you need us to vote on it?
I just want to comment, that's why Dave Hudson made you chair.
So just move it to.
I'll make a motion to move the presentation as presented to the full council.
I can second.
With the additional caveat, I want to amend that with the recommendations. With the Finance Committee recommends approving the adjustments that you presented.
Thank you. Eva got dropped off the call, just to let you know. She's trying to log back in.
Okay. Well, so long as Christina got the motion, move the presentation and
Vote, Christina, that's fine.
And approve the recommended general fund and other fund amendments.
Okay.
And I second. So.
And then Vice Chair Perkins.
Aye.
And then Chair Zafar.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's it. I guess we're adjourned till the next committee meeting, which is scheduled for March 8th, 2021.
I think it's in April.
Okay.
The next meeting. Is it in March? I don't believe it's.
That's what my agenda says.
No.
Yeah, March 8th is what the next meeting is on March 8th.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You don't care as much anymore, do you really? Joe, how close are we to naming Ava's successor?
Well, I have some interviews coming up this week, so we're moving along.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.